This is Breaking Medtech, and we're doing an intro to the intro, and then we're going to edit this post. So we just had my dad on, okay? And
the great Dominick Pistone.
The great. And you and I were talking about it afterwards, and we wanted to quick record something, and that is, if you're a small med tech company, this is a great episode to listen to. And it's a great episode to listen to because he talks about stuff that is practical and useful and, frankly, not what you see most people talk about publicly. All this motivational BS, I don't like it. He's going like, here's what I did, here's why I did it, here's what I care about, here's how I think about it. And for anyone who is struggling with sales or just looking to get better at sales, this is a really good episode to listen to.
Yeah, and I think for those companies that know they need to get customers, but maybe don't have a salesperson, you're about to hear one. Like, this guy exudes, and I mean this as the highest compliment. This is what a salesperson sounds like that really does their job. He's not braggadocious. The things he says are simple, but if you met Dominick Pistone, you would want to buy something from him because of how he goes about what he does, not just who he is. And I think this is important.
And that's he is charismatic. He probably thinks he's James Bond. He's not, right? He's not. And I mean that as a compliment of that's not who he is as a sales rep. He's not the one who's sitting there and going and charming a receptionist to let him go by, and that's not who he is. So it's not like it's definitely not his good looks, okay? He's not getting by on looks, all right? He's getting by on just he knows how to talk to people. He knows how to have conversations with people. If I learned anything from him as I can't do a lot of things that he can do. I wish I was as good as he is. It's like being the son of Magic Johnson. And he's pretty good at basketball, right? I learned how to be comfortable talking to anyone, right? Yeah. And that's what he does. He's comfortable talking to anyone. He knows how to read a room. He's just good. He's just good. And having someone like that is what grows a company.
Yeah, exactly. And I think here's my takeaway on this, and I think, Ryan, that was what you said is accurate. If you're a small med device company and you want to go, you need to grow, you don't need 800 1099s, you don't need a VP of commercialization, you need one or two Dominick Pistones in your foxhole who get up every day, believe in your product, and it's all they want to do is go talk about it. And they're not easy to find, but when you find them, you got to get them in the building, and you got to hug them, and you got to pay them, and you got to unleash them, because they will quadruple anything that board of yours thinks you should do. These are the people that move the needle. And I want people to hear what this sounds like, because he's about to talk with us for 30 minutes, and you just listen. You're going to love it.
This is Breaking Medtech. I am Ryan. That is Cope. My dad's also here. What a fun time. Cope, who's my dad?
Okay. So our guest today is Dominick Pistone. I think I've known DP for 10 years. I've known of him for about 20. Again, he won't acknowledge this, but I think he's the best. I will put him up. I think he's the single best med device salesperson on the planet, and he's definitely the best I've known. I like to think I'm pretty good. I think he's the best. And we have him here today because sales is very difficult. Med device sales is very difficult. And I think Dominick goes and gets new customers and new business. And I've seen him do it a bunch of places. And that's a rare skill set. And we wanted him to talk about that because he has a lot of experience with small med device companies too. So I'm thrilled. As I told you, I could talk to him for 4 hours on this. I don't think that's the best idea unless it's a Rogan podcast, right?
Yeah.
We can go 3-4 hours. But that's not how we roll here. But I want to hear advice he has, things he's learned, things that he has changed, and what makes him a hunter. And so, Ryan, why don't you ask your dad and our guest, Dominick Pistone, to tell us a little bit about himself.
I'm going to make it weird and call him Papa. So, Dad, I've known you my entire life. I've only ever known you to be a salesperson. I recently found out that you worked for a year at Geico, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, pretty much when I came out of college in the mid 70s, 74, 75, I went to work. My first job was with Geico, and we sold car insurance. And we actually had a blast. There were a bunch of young people. They hired a lot of young people right out of college. We sat in an office. We made phone calls all day. We had the most interesting people call us, talk to us, and it was a learning experience. I left that job and moved on to go to work for Pitney Bowes. I sold postage machines, and I sold copiers in Newark, New Jersey. And in those days, we had a big bag. These guys were laughing at me. I was explaining to them. I had a postage machine inside this bag. I had literature inside this bag, and I walked up and down the streets of Newark trying to sell people in a candy store a copier and trying to sell people just hanging out in the corner a postage machine. But actually, I did meet and almost sell a postage machine to Famous Amos Cookies. He was in a garage in Newark, just starting his business. We had a great conversation. He was a great guy, but he didn't buy anything. I was a couple of years early before his success. From there, I went to work for Cheeseboro Ponds, their hospital division, and their hospital division at that time, we sold urinary catheters, we sold TriFlow, a breathing machine, we sold burn dressings, we sold a ton of different things. It was my first real learning experience. They sent us, actually Pitney Bowes sent us to the same school, a sales selling school in Philly that we went to for 10 days, and we learned about selling. And a lot of what I learned there, I still carry with me today, because a lot of it was about how you approach your customers, how you talk to customers, and how you figure out what your customers need and want. I also believe I sold the first electronic thermometer in the country. My son does not believe that.
Prove him wrong, guys. No, I got your back.
Cheeseboro Ponds. Actually, Cheeseboro Ponds made regular thermometers, oral and rectal, up in Watertown, New York. And they came up with a electronic thermometer, and we brought it to the VA in Bedminster, New Jersey, and that's where I sold the first ones. Again, it was a fun job. We learned a lot of things. The burn dressing side of it was where I learned that it's not always fun to be in medical sales because of the things you're presented with and you have to see. But it also makes you realize that you're selling products that help people, and you're selling things that make things better in terms of healthcare, and which has always been the driving force in everything else I've done. I then went to work on Wall Street for a couple of years. I'm not too sure why. A couple of my buddies that were at Cheeseboro Ponds decided they were going to go to Wall Street. They were a little bit more aggressive than me, and they were sort of that boiler room type. We'll sell you anything and everything. Just send us your money, and you may not have it next week, but don't worry about it. We'll find something else for you. It was a hard sell. I studied for that test. That was the most intensive thing I've ever studied for, and got my license. Worked at Lehman Brothers in New York City for about 18 months. Was going broke because I couldn't sell anything. So I decided I needed to not do that anymore. Went to work for Synthase, which was a great job, a great company. I was lucky enough to have Danny Pontecorvo be in the early stages of his selling, and I learned a lot from him in terms of how you treat your customers and how you make your customers feel comfortable with you being there. And that lasted for a while, and then I ended up at Zimmer and Zimmer Trauma, helping them sell their trauma line that that I learned selling with Synthes, and then from that progressed to going to work for Zimmer Randall as a joint rep, and did that for almost 35 years. I took a territory with Mark Randall that had less than $500,000 worth of business in the Lehigh Valley, and when I left Zimmer, that territory was up over 10 million. I had, through my time there, 3 people working for me now and then, but it was great. And then I continued with working with Mark Randall and a couple other people, and we sell a few niche products that are extremely exciting. We were selling one tray for a long time. I was 6'1" with a lot of curly brown hair, selling the one tray until the FDA letter came out, and then that.
He's 5'10" and bald.
Yeah, it aged me dramatically. But again, it was a selling experience where you learn to say, this is true, this is what the product does, and everybody else is saying, no, it doesn't, but you're crazy. Eventually, the FDA thing went away.
Can I lean on this? That's when you and I started working together, and I remember people. What we were doing was selling a brand new product that nobody had heard of from a company nobody had heard of, and we were selling it in places where they'd never heard of us. Virginia, Georgia, we were all over. This was not a relationship sell. This was a sales job, and we were selling products, a product that solved a lot of problems, and I just think that's different. I think a lot of people think med device, think relationships. You were great at that, but you were also about going hey, I don't have any relationships here. I can go sell in Indiana. I remember this, right? And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here. Other than I've been worried about your hair loss, because I remember I just met you a couple of years ago and you had curly and you were 6'1". But
not coming back.
But you know this as well as I do. I think it's a temperament and it's a skill set, and you're really good at it. So tell me, DP, because you've done all. By the way, out of curiosity, which at its height was your favorite sales job that you did of all those? I'm just curious.
Money aside.
Yeah, just when your favorite, the one you liked the most.
The one I liked the least was Wall Street.
He said most.
Because I loved the Cheeseboro Ponds job. I loved the Synthes job. I loved the Zimmer job. I love with one tray, and now with the Titan retractor, and with some other things we're involved in. So I've liked almost every one of my sales jobs. And I've liked the different people that I've met, because some places were doctors, some places were OR people and doctors, other places were SPD. Yeah.
And I do want to point out, because I know when we were talking earlier, one of the things that we said was why is someone like Dominick so important? When you have someone who's a relationship builder, they're great, but they're only great in their territory, right? And they're not great at going and hunting in new territories, because relationship builders, it takes a long time to build a relationship with someone. So they're perfect if, I know a really good relationship builder in New York City. They're really good in New York City. I don't know whether they're going to have that impact in Indiana, right? Just because they don't know anyone in Indiana, and that's kind of a hard thing, and you have to, it's a challenge for them, and they don't get comfortable with that. But what I noticed with my dad, literally everywhere, and I'll tell you a funny story that kind of proves it, is he's just comfortable being uncomfortable. He's comfortable walking into situations and being uncomfortable. And I remember sitting in a car, and it was a very important lesson that I had to learn from him. And if it was something I picked up from him, is you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. We were sitting in a parking lot. It was about 10 degrees. We were in Indiana, and we were cold calling on a bunch of ASCs and hospitals in South Bend, Indiana, selling one tray. And I remember I went in and I asked for, I was trying to get in front of, we'd never been in this place, okay? Trying to get past the front desk. And I went in and they're like, hey, they're not available. And I left something there. And I got back in the car, and he's my dad. And he's like, what'd you do? And I told him, and he was like, don't fucking do that. You need to go back in there right now. And I'm like, I'm not going back in there. And he's like, you're fucking going back in there right now, and you're going to get a name and a number, and you're going to figure out who it is. And we were in the car yelling at each other. He was right. This is the first time I've admitted it now, 5 years later. He was right, because it was uncomfortable for me when they said, hey, just hand us something, for me to go, well, what's the person's name? Now, I'm not nearly as smooth as he is at doing it, but you have to be uncomfortable, which a lot of sales reps, even though they claim that they're built in the fire of Mordor, that, I'm so good at that. Most of them don't like being uncomfortable. They don't like going into situations. And hunters, I think, really have to be comfortable with, I'm just walking in here. I don't give a shit what anyone thinks about me. My job is to sell.
DP, your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with most of what Ryan says, and I think that number one, let me go back one real quick. I've never sold a product that I didn't like and I didn't believe in, and I think that's one of the main things. You've got to like what you're selling. When I was selling thermometers at Cheese Barrel Ponds, I thought they were the best thing in the world. When I was selling at Synthase, and it was the best thing in the world.
It was the best, yeah.
One tray solved a major problem. I believed it. Now with the Titan and other things, that's number one. You have to believe in your product. But to Ryan's point, one thing I always was taught by someone that's very close to me is you've got to always be aware that you have to look comfortable in wherever you are. You have to be walking into someplace as if I should be here. I'm here for a reason. I should be here. I've never been pushy. I've never been, over the top. I just walk in, I believe, and I'm comfortable where I'm walking into. I know that I want to get information. I know that I want to get a contact, and I'm not going to push anybody, but I'm not going to give up with the first or second or third question. Do I think I'm charming? Yeah, I do. I think that, whether I'm talking to a guy and I'm going to have maybe a little different attitude, or I'm talking to a receptionist or whoever, yeah, I think I put them at ease. That's my personality. And if you're able to do that and not be so focused on, I've got to do this. Oh my God, because people can read you, and people are then set back by that. Hey, I'm not asking you for the keys to the vault. I'm just asking you for the name of the person that's in charge of purchasing. Or I'm just asking you for this. And one thing, if we were joking before we got on, I said, you never lie about something. You never tell a non-truth. You may stretch reality, but you don't say something that you can't.
That's right.
If you're called out on it, you're going to be able to say, well, that's what I did, or that's what I said. Yeah. I always make sure that if I'm going into a place, I've either called that place and asked for somebody for whatever specific reason. If I have a name, nowadays it's send an email. You're sending an email, people aren't responding. You're making phone calls, people are never calling you back. If I get stopped by somebody in security or somebody else and I say, I'm looking to talk to so-and-so. Well, do you have an appointment? No, but I've reached out to him. I sent a couple emails. I haven't really heard back from him. I'm not sure that he's not expecting me, which are all true things. When somebody feels like you're not pushing or threatening what they're doing and you're respecting what they're doing, they're more likely to say, you know what, let me pick up the phone. And they'll call that department. Or here's the name and whatever. So I think that before you even go to where it's the product that you're selling, it's you that's got to get sold into that environment. And I think that's one of the biggest things is if you're confident, if you feel good and you act like you belong where you're at, that's a big deal. I think that's a big stepping stone.
Yeah, and to people who watch this, who don't know Dominick, a couple things you said. Number one, if you're a joint rep, you're a relationship rep, and if you're a small med device hunter, it's a different kind of sell. But you still have to be likable and a good person. And I would say that that's why I think DP is so good is that he can go to Indiana and have no relationships, and he comes back and he's got relationships. They're not long-term, deep-seated, we grow up together relationships, but you're good at both of those types of sales, which means, which is an indication to me of how talented you are. But so tell me what makes you, how can I describe this? You like to go get new business. That's fun to you, right? Yeah. Is it the money? Is it the win? Is it what makes that fulfilling for you? Because you would, you go do this, and you've been doing this for a long time, and you are not afraid to go get new customers, and that's what I admire. What drives you to do that?
It's a combination of everything. Number one, I've been a commission sales rep since I was in my 20s. When I worked at Cheeseboro Ponds, we were commission. You didn't get salary. I think the last job I had that I got a salary was Geico, the insurance company. And, but every other job I had, I sold on commission. So that's a motivating factor for me. But I also know that to grow my job, grow my territory, I've got to know my product. I've got to know what my territory is and who my customers are. And then I'm motivated to go out and make a presentation. And let's face it, I'm no different than anybody else. I get nine no's out of 10 tries. We all do. But I had a sales manager, I still remember it to this day, a guy named Marty Farb at Synthes, or at Cheeseboro Ponds. He used to say, if you've got 9 irons in the fire, if you're working 9 different deals, you're going to start having deals fall for you. And it's true. You can't, if you have somebody say, I'm not interested, I don't care, I don't want to talk to you, okay, that's fine. But you better move right on to the next thing and make those calls. I always used to say to the people that work for me that the best and most important call you make is the one you don't want to make. The one at 4 o'clock in the afternoon where you say, I'm not going to call one more person. Call one more person. On a Friday afternoon. You'd be surprised how many times I bumped into people who either were avoiding me or I never saw on a Friday afternoon or later in the day, and they'd say, why are you still working? Like a doctor. You'd be in the office and goes, what are you still working for? Well, I'm trying to see you. I've been trying to do this. Or when you show up at a hospital and you walk down to SPD and there's not a lot of people now, like early in the day, and gee, guess who's sitting at their desk and they say, can I help you? And it's like, oh yeah, this is who I am. Why are you here? But you know what? It's the end of the day. They'll give you a couple minutes because they want to get out the door. So I'm driven by commissions, no doubt. I'm driven by making money, but I'm driven by the success of making money, and I love the whole deal. But a lot of times I'd come home pissed off that I had a doctor say no to me or that I had a customer say no to me. But you know what? The next day I got up and I went to work. And I have to say, and Ryan will tell
He
you
still would play basketball with me that night, though. Okay, I want everyone
Yes.
to know he wouldn't not play basketball with me.
exactly, or coach the girls softball team, or do something else creative. But I have to say, I get up every day wanting to work, wanting to do what I do. I never, if you don't like what you're doing, don't do it. Because if you're not going to be challenging yourself, and I think that's the other part of a good salesman's personality isn't being so gun ho that if something doesn't happen, you like fall flat in your face, but just being even keel and doing the same thing that you know is right. That's the main thing. And then I think the other thing is too is recognizing your customers and recognizing what your customers want. Because I think
Yeah.
too many sales reps, and I'll tell you what, Synthase was the perfect example. Dan Pontecorvo was great because he listened to everybody. But there were Synthase reps. I'm never the smartest rep. I promise you. I'm never the sharpest pencil in the room. But I listen and I absorb. But there were guys there that were so smart, but they were too smart. They would always have more discussions with the doctors about what they should do and how they should do the surgery, rather than trying to sell them the product that you're actually there to sell them to do the surgery. So I always say you need to know your product as much as you can, but you need to know your customers and you need to know where you need to go to hunt. You know, like you said, don't pick the easy places. Pick the hard places. You can pick an easy place once in a while, but pick the harder places because you'll feel more of an accomplishment and you'll get more confident as you're doing that.
Yep. I love that. You talked about this. I've heard you say this, that you think reps should be full. If you really want to sell, I'm paraphrasing. Correct me where I'm wrong. You should want to be full commission, not salary plus bonus. And I agree. Tell me, like, when did you realize that? Like, how old were you when you learned that? Because you've never gone back.
No, I can tell you that when I was selling the Morning Call newspaper, subscriptions to the Morning Call newspapers with my buddies on my bike, and we were getting paid by the subscription, and that's the God's honest truth. I think that's when I started learning that, you know what, this is pretty good. You know, if I get these subscriptions, I'm getting paid. It's not like he's going to give me $4 to go out for 10 hours, and then no. If I'm making all my work, doing my work, and making all my calls, I'm going to make a lot more money than my buddies that are saying, yeah, just pay me, and I'll make 15 calls and pay me 10 cents. No, it wouldn't be 10 cents. $10.
He grew up in the 1910s.
No,
Didn't?
but
Hey,
no,
that's
but
my friend
again,
you're talking about.
I think that I want to. If I'm working for a company, whether it's as an independent rep, which is now mostly what I do, I want to be paid on what I sell because I'm confident that I'm going to sell, and if
Right.
my commission's going to be higher, and there's no way that they're going to pay me as much salary as I would make if I'm in on the deal and getting commission for what I sell. You all right, Cope?
You're muted. Oh, he's coughing.
Is there a cough button somewhere? I can
Yeah, there's a cough. Yeah, there's a dump button.
Okay.
So I guess I have another question for you. When you let's go a bit tactical here. I know you get in arguments with my siblings sometimes because you have a habit of, if somebody's not getting back to you, you hop in a car and drive 5 hours. Okay. And I kind of understand it. Your other children don't. And, what is the driving force behind that? Because a lot of people wouldn't do that. Right. And is it because, are you like, I know I have them, I just have to get in there, or, you just don't want to keep calling and emailing?
Well, I think that you can email to the cows come home, and if you're not getting responses, well, then you're not moving forward. If you call and call and call and nobody's answering, talking, then you're not going to get anything. I won't drive to an account that I don't think that I haven't been in and have thought through the fact that they truly need this product and there's something that they're missing. And I also say, and my kids will tell you this too, because people don't answer your emails, because people don't respond to your phone calls, probably have nothing to do with you.
Yeah. I mean, I often, that is actually something that I've said multiple times on the show, that you have taught me that you're not nearly as important as you think you are.
Yeah, and you know, everybody's got a life. You know, that guy that's sitting at the desk, he might have had a fight with his wife when he went in that morning and he's not answering anybody's emails. Or you happen to catch him on a day where he's been swamped and that email goes out the window. So why would I jump in the car and drive that far? It's only because I think that account, I've done my homework enough, I've been in front of those people, and I'm saying this can be done, but I got to get there. And again, 9 times out of 10, you get there and they say, you know what, I apologize. You sent all these emails, I meant to get back there. You know what, yeah, we used it a couple times and we love it. You know, if you don't talk face to somebody, and if they don't like it, they're going to tell you you don't like it, and then you're done. You know, so now that one's crossed off the list. But
how many times, DP, did you? Because we've both experienced it. You go in there and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you showed up. I've been meaning to get back to you."
yeah,
Right?
yeah, all the time. You know,
Yeah.
and then they apologize. I mean,
And the reason why I asked that is because I want anyone listening to this to really understand that that's a really important lesson, right? Is if you know that they were interested at some point, you know that they like, it's weird, they just seem to ghost you, right? You know, sometimes I wouldn't say hop on a plane and go across the country unless you're going to make a bunch of other cold calls while you're there, though. You know, if you need to, you have to do it. But you know, popping in on someone and doing something, again, I know you say I feel comfortable walking into every situation. I believe you that you do. But for a lot of founders and people at small medical device companies, that's an uncomfortable thing that you just have to become comfortable with, of going, if this person was actually interested, if I think my product is going to help them and they're not getting back to me, I better drive there, fly there, walk there, take a train, whatever you need to do, and try to get in front of them, because at least you know yes or you know no. But by just going like, I can't, I mean, I can think of half a dozen, and I'm sure you guys can think of 10 times more of people you've talked to that just go, well, they stopped answering my email, so we stopped bothering them.
yeah, and like I said, in 9 times out of 10, that person will say, I apologize. I was swamped. You know, I had my appendix out and I've been out for 3 weeks. I mean, it could be anything, but I'm not going to be satisfied if it's an account that I think really wants it. Now, if it's an account that gave me bad vibes off the bat, and, you know, I'm thinking they're not going to do it and it's not worth my while, then I don't. And I'll tell you the other thing, if I drive 5 miles to go somewhere or 5 hours to go somewhere, I'm finding an account to stop at, either going there or coming back. Because, again, you're out, you're doing something, and oh, by the way, and you'll be surprised how many times that ends up being a big deal that you would have never, ever gotten if you weren't doing this, you know, doing the other thing. So
It's also, he's going to get a sandwich. He's going to get a sandwich. He's going to listen to an audiobook.
I always find a good place to eat. That's very important to me.
Well, DP, I'd like your thoughts on this too, because you've seen the 1099 versus direct, and a lot of the med device companies, small ones I talk to, and are frustrated because they have 1099s and only 1 out of 10 really sells, and they can't figure it out. And I think, like what you were describing, that example is you you got up in the morning, you get up thinking, how can I sell more of whatever the product is, right? And that's different than having a product in a bag and you got a bunch of things and you're going to sell what's easiest or most profitable for you, right? But could you talk about that? Because you know what I'm talking about. You hear how companies will complain that their 1099s don't sell much, and they don't. Only some of them can. They'll say only some of them can sell. In the meantime, I'm like, they're going to sell what they can sell and make money on. That's not the same thing. Any comments on that? Because you've been in that boat. We've all been there.
Again, I think it comes down to, if you're a small company and you're trying to get your product sold, you need to engage with somebody that you've talked to, believes what your product is, and isn't going to be walking in, which, I know salesmen that are 1099s, that they walk in with their bag, and if they say no to one thing, they start pulling other stuff out. Oh, by the way, or they may be talking about your product, and they get the person really interested, and then they can't stop themselves. And at the end of the conversation, they say, "And oh, by the way, I have this." Well, you know what? That ends up being that.
He's talking about one person right now.
Yes,
and that's true.
But he's right. But he is right. This does happen.
It happens.
Yeah. So I think you have to make a commitment to find one or two people, and you might have to make a little investment. They may. I'm not going to say, "Hey, I'm going to take no commission on a brand new product and go run with it unless I'm really sold on it." Like the Titan retractor. I had I'll tell you, one of the best products I've ever sold, one of the most satisfying products I've ever sold. But it's such an intriguing concept, and it really changes the way these doctors approach open trauma. I didn't need anything other than my commissions, and my commissions were good because I didn't need anything else.
Yeah.
So you can't expect a 1099 who's got if they got more than two products, then you're not going to be at the top of the list if it's not easy, because they're already comfortable with whatever they're doing.
Right. Ryan and I talk about this. I feel like some of these small med device companies that we talk to, who have zero sales, or maybe like a couple, but they really don't. I would rather have one or two of you than 20 1099s, even though they've got scale, but they don't prioritize your product. I'd rather have you getting up every day going, how can I sell this? How can I go sell this? And locked, because you believe in the product, and they're paying you appropriately. And that's one of my rationales. Like, if I'm a small med device company, I need people who are in the foxhole with me every day, all day long. And you can hire them, or you can, but like, that's what I want.
It's spot on, because the other thing that we talk about, like, what do these companies do? They do one of two things, right? They go hire a bunch of 1099s because, I don't know, they do, and then they're all over the place, and you joke it looks great on a map, like throwing pins up on a board. Or they go and hire a senior vice president who is from, he or she is from, a Fortune 500 company, and they come in and they haven't actually sold something, like sold something in a decade, and then they get uncomfortable because they don't know, like, what do you mean I have to go call on people? I know a handful of people, and it's I've seen, you've seen, we've all seen dozens of companies just stall or die because they're so worried about maybe what their board thinks, or what, we need to commercialize. That's what we need to do. No, what you need to do is go sell into 10 or 20 accounts.
Yeah, and that's why we have DP on here, right? Because I hear commercialize or market or brand. I'm like, what you need is sales. You need a
Yeah,
person
exactly.
who sells stuff and sells yours and gets customers, not, and we were talking about this before we came on, not an order taker, an order maker, somebody who goes out and drives interest and curiosity and evaluations and presentations and sales.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the
Yeah.
engine.
If
DP, go
you've
ahead.
got if you've got a good product, if you're a small company with a good product, like I said, you could have the best product in the world. You better know why that product makes
Yeah.
your customer happy, why your product makes that customer's life simpler, why it makes that customer more productive. You know, all the things that are important to the customer, and then you've got to find somebody that is going to go out and find the right people. I don't have to make 100 calls. I don't. There are people that make up. Oh, how many calls did you make today? How many call? How many people? That's not important because most of them probably weren't qualified, and most of them you wasted your time. If I make 5 good calls or 3 good calls or 2 good calls in a day, that's building business. I mean that, and depending on what kind of product you're selling, whether it's a capital item that's a one and done, or whether it's a capital item that comes with disposables that have a residual tie to it. If I believe a product is going to be something good for a customer and it's going to make that customer more successful, I'm going to sell it and I'm going to be able to sell it. And these companies have to realize that without 100%, and I don't, like I said, I might have 1 or 2 products, but I make sure that the 1 or 2 that I have get my full attention all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. That's a
Yeah.
really good description. Dom, I had a question. This is a weird one. This is one of these podcast type questions. Anything that you do today that you've been doing for 25, 30, 40 years, like this, like I know earlier you said don't lie, or listen to your customer, know your product well, but listen to what the customer's saying. Anything that you think like is a hard and fast fundamental that will never change? And then is there anything that you've changed over the years as you've gotten better and more mature and more miles on the tires? Like anything like that you've got experience. I love listening to it.
Yeah, I think that I think my hard and fast things are I have to believe in the product. I have to know, like I keep saying, how the product is going to benefit the customer.
Yeah.
And you can't exaggerate. You can't, be non-factual. You have to be honest. And I'll be, again, I'll be honest with you. And my son will probably tell you about some of my instances. I'm not always like ready to answer every question, but I'm ready for every question to be answered. I may not have it immediately, but I'll get it. I've been in operating rooms where surgeons have asked me a question about my product. I probably should have known it, but I didn't at that moment. And I said, let me get an answer right now. And I either picked up the phone in the OR or walked out in the hallway, got a product manager, walked right back in and said it. And the surgeon was like, now other people wouldn't do that. They'd like say, well, maybe, no.
Yeah.
But those are the things I learned early on. And like I said, be yourself. And by being yourself, you're a genuine person, not somebody that they think, oh, he's just trying to sell me something, because that's
Right.
what people think about salesmen.
Yeah.
But the things I learned early on are things I've carried through, and like I said, just integrity, being honest to people, having a good product, and knowing how that product works, and get your butt out and make the calls. The days that, again, I don't Ryan will tell you, I don't ever really get out of bed and not want to do something. And if I'm not doing something, I'll find something to do. But you've got to want to work. And, do I think about, I used to think about my job while I was coaching third base of the baseball games, or I used to think about why isn't this doctor using something, or why isn't this customer doing something? I was always thinking about that. And I think people in business will say that all the time, that I'm thinking of last night I'm laying in bed and I'll be darned if I didn't think, but now I have to write it down because I won't remember it when I wake up in the morning. But, I think all of those things are important, but that's all a part of enjoying what you're doing, and if you're enjoying what you're doing, people need things. People need efficiency. People, they don't know everything, and they do depend on us to give that to them. So,
I love it. Rye, you got anything else for?
No, I've just now I know where I get that constant thinking about different things of work everywhere I am, and then I'm kind of drifting off, and my Cooper gets mad at me because I'm not listening. So I'm going to work on that, though. All right. No, I got nothing else. I'm sure we'll have you on. Maybe this will be like a series.
Do I get paid for the entire hour?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, you get paid. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just checking.
I'll drop off.
You have Venmo, right?
No, I'm gonna drop off peanut M&Ms. He's driving. He's driving to Illinois tomorrow, and I know he wants peanut M&Ms more than.
I actually bought them last night coming home from Detroit.
Boom.
So I got them.
Currency comes in many forms.
Currency.
Yes.
Yeah, peanut M&Ms.
It's the
DP,
little thing.
thanks, man. Like I was excited to have you on here, and we want these small med device companies to understand what real sales sounds like and looks like, and you were perfect to describe it, and it's great.
Yeah,
I just love it.
It's you're tactical, you're practical. I don't have another call.
Galactical.
You're galactical. You're tactical. You're practical. You're galactical. No, it's a really important thing because again, like I see so many of these companies and you hear these things, and it's not just in med device, but we're talking med device of just all these industries that go and hire and spend a large amount of money making the wrong decisions because they think they need something that they don't actually need, and what they need is someone who's going to go out and close business. When you hear when you hear stories of like the Intuitive people who were like successful, like Intuitive, they had really good leadership, okay, and they were always like forward thinking. They grew that business because they hired absolute killers who went out there and just closed account after account after account. Like when you hear stories of like, well, how'd you become senior vice president of sales for Intuitive or for some, company? And they're like, oh, well, when I started, they had 100 accounts. And then when I left Intuitive, they had 2,500 and I helped close 85% of them. Mm-hmm. Like that's what you need. That is how you grow. And that's not usually that's not a vice president of commercialization. It's not that they're not important and they don't help with pricing and all these other cool little things, but you need cash flow. So if we're going to talk business for the people, you need cash flow, and the only way you get cash flow is selling.
Yeah, none of it means a thing if you can't get it to customers and it doesn't solve problems.
Yeah.
And the people who do that, who deliver that, are guys like Dominick. So I love it.
And guys and girls.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Jeez.
So, all right. Well, listen, Dominick, thank you so much for being on here.
I
Enjoy your
appreciate
peanut M&Ms.
you having me. And,
Will you tell your grandchildren to stop or children to stop texting you? Jeez.
No, tell them to text you more. And this has been Breaking Medtech.
Bye.
Thanks,
See
Dominick.
ya. Thank you.